Episode 6, Successions and Siblings. Welcome to Talking Family Business. My name is Leah Crowley, and in this 6-episode series, we're taking a look at succession plans, cycles and future-proofing family businesses. HLB Mann Judd partner Stephen Preen, HLB Mann Judd Business Advisory Manager Tom Roberts, Western Earthmoving's Managing Director Graham Ragg and General Manager Michael Ragg are all here again. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you. Afternoon, Leah.
We've also got another Ragg here too, Tom Ragg.
Hello.
This is where we're going to have an open conversation about successions, inheritance and family trusts. This is for all of you. Whoever's the most, polite can go first. In your opinion, what are the benefits of keeping a business in the family? Maybe we'll go with you first, Graham.
Okay, well, in the words of Gomez Adams, old business before new business. You have to watch the movie to get that one. No, I think the benefits are, for our sort of business, the leadership of it has to be pretty driven. And I think if it was sold into other hands, it would be a different business. I think that, I think of the 4 generations. I'll say 4, and then I'll say Mr. Arthur Baxter was the first. He was a different character, very hard-working, very focused, and very focused on good outcomes. And started off, my dad was really driven in terms of production and good outcomes and customer focus. I've been very driven throughout my career. I love what I do, and I just want to go hard all the time and look after developing a bulletproof sort of business. And I think Mike's inherited the same sort of gene, pretty apparent with how he behaves. And we're very different people, but he's got the same sort of drive. I think that a family business of our sort of nature benefits from having family, doing the managing of the business and setting the priorities of how the behaviour of the business runs.
Mike, would you say the one benefit of keeping business in the family is that there's a like-minded drive there?
I think continuity is one word that comes to the front of mind for me, in that there's a similar style in the leadership. So definitely in our business, everyone turned to Graham as a very, very solid leader, to have whether that was to provide that feeling of safety or comfort or direction or management or whatever it was. And having worked with Graham, at that time I'm able to learn from his style and put my own style as to, there's we're both individuals, so we're different, but put my own spin on that. And I think we complement each other quite well, but it means that with succession, there's continuity in the leadership style. So there's not this one day it's this style, the next day it changes when there's not necessarily family ownership change, or that's what we see as a strength. Definitely I do. I know Graham does as well. Each to their own. Some businesses it doesn't work. Yeah, I think continuity is the big thing that comes to mind for people that work in the business and for customers and for the family as well.
I was going to say, Tom, you must see, you and Stephen must see this a fair bit. And is continuity such a key factor in this succession?
Yeah, the legacy of the family endeavours to continue those on. In this case here, we've got the family going back, and that progression and wealth generation in the family, not only for the family, but for everybody associated with the company. The businesses, all the stakeholders, which is, the people they deal with, employees, etc., they all benefit from that legacy, keeping it all together. And it's how they manage people. And you can see at Weston's how they've always managed the people, the staff, the number of generations which have worked for them, and everyone appreciated that, and so forth. And the benefits, they've always helped to improve their quality of life. So even though, the Ragg family's got the ownership, it's not only their family benefits, everybody that benefits.
Tom, anything you want to add?
No, I think that's pretty much a perfect summary, to be honest. I think, Mike spoke about continuity. As Stephen said, I think we speak quite regularly about legacy. And it's really about protecting that.
And I guess even if we go back to a couple of episodes ago, we were talking about when you were first introduced to WEM, that Stephen kind of went in and went, look, this is so even you guys have tried to get that continuity going with your own business.
Yeah, we have people coming through like Tom, who we are totally supportive of and appreciate their knowledge and so forth, which we see growing with us and growing with our clients. So it develops because at the end of the day, I drop off and you've got people coming through. Otherwise, there's no business.
Before that meeting, when we first met Tom, Stephen and I had a conversation about this sort of thing without Mike involved and looking at the future. And Stephen and I are the same sort of age, and we've probably between us got probably only 40 years left between us.
Yeah.
Something like
40
that.
odd. Yeah.
Well, a fair few years anyway. But we were mindful of, what's the next steps. And he said, look, I've got someone to introduce you to. I won't say any more about it. You work out. So, we then had reflective sort of trials, and we're looking to see if Tom, the next generation, were like-minded people that would add value to our business, and that we could also give them a fair run as well on how we would interact. And he did okay first meeting.
He was okay?
He was okay first meeting.
So came into my home in the second meeting.
Okay, great.
No, and that was a gradual process. Again, there's no way I was going to meet someone, whoever recommended, and say, yeah, that's right. It had to be a long-term thing. So that took a bit of thinking and timing, and it's a great position for us.
It'd be fair to say that we are pick and stick type people.
What's pick and stick mean?
Well, I'll tell you what, we'll never go to another podcast place other than this.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Once we love someone, we love forever.
Yeah. We look for the long-term relationship.
Yeah, and if the other side behaves badly, we'll correct their behaviour.
Yeah,
so
right.
We're all back in love again. Or we'll have to adjust our own.
Yeah.
Is that not only a WEM thing but a RAG thing?
Yeah, I think so. But I think it's probably more a WEM thing than a RAG thing. But yeah, it's probably in the RAG gene a bit. WEM as a company certainly pick and stick.
Yeah.
Long-term customers, long-term suppliers, long-term supporters, that, both sides test each other the whole time to check the validity of the arrangement, but it's strong.
But there's also that continuity thing. You're having a pick and stick, you develop a relationship that works well. You're able to talk shorthand. You don't need to rehash history. There's what the past is. You don't need to keep rehashing it and starting afresh with someone new. There's some businesses that we deal with where there is a turnstile of people coming in and out, and it's frustrating to be able to develop that actual close relationship that actually fosters things that are beneficial for both parties. That becomes hard in business.
Yeah, it does. Look, we've got a lot of corporate customers, and gradually over since the last 15 years, the number of corporate customers has increased and our relationship with them. And Steve spoke in an earlier episode about the need for us to be more professional in our approach, and they've helped us with a lot of things that way. And the IT systems we put in, the financial background we put in now is very, very strong and able to deal with these things. But the frustration sometimes is that they've become, as Mike said, a bit of a turnstile. People change in there so that we still, whether it's a corporate or whether it's Mr. Smith, the local dentist, Dr. Smith, the local dentist, we just want the personal relationship as well. And someone's got to take that role. And as we get bigger, larger, stronger, we're making sure we're coaching and training more of our people to take on those responsibilities.
Yeah.
And as I said earlier, in terms of our succession, it's to support Mike and the future part of the business to be as vibrant and strong as it's always been. So that hasn't changed. That nature of how we behave hasn't changed. That goes back, I know that from before I started. You were customer responsive the whole time.
Stephen and Tom, how common is it for family members when the business founder retires or passes away or whatever? Do they suddenly have to scramble to go through to see who wants to go where, who wants to get what? Because it's obvious that the WEM guys have had this discussion. We've discussed it in earlier episodes as well, but there's plans, but that can't be everybody, right?
No, a lot of people don't have plans, and that's where it all comes unstuck. Because if you've got, there's got to be a strategy somewhere of what's going to happen down the track, irrespective of how people are. Because you get to the point where there's no one in the business, or you're reliant on people trying to manage as non-executive and so forth, competitors who are looking at you, all sorts of issues going on. So it's just got to be a structure there. So somebody who suddenly dies creates a huge issue in the family, not only for just the immediate emotional side of things, but the financial situation.
And I guess for staff to try and do business as usual to their clients would be difficult in that situation as well.
Yeah, look, can I just add on to what Steve said? I mean, part of what we look at now in our relationship with our subcontractor suppliers is to how viable they are, what their future proofing is, what plans they put in place. And some of them are very, very strong businesses. But if you ask them what's happening in 4 weeks, if something went wrong, not a clue, no planning. So we need to hedge how we work with those guys very carefully because we want to be the infinite business.
Yeah, you want to be stable. Yeah,
Exactly.
you want to. Yeah,
So we need stable people with us. So we're aware of that all the time. I suppose these guys have helped us be more aware, but we look at that in terms of who our partners are and how we work with people.
Yeah, because you can have, you quite often see there's a break-up in the family when the founder dies because either one person's been involved and one hasn't, but there hasn't been a clear discussion on what's going to happen in the future. So everything's just up in the air and the business suffers.
You'd also have people within the family who are not working for the business, who are then like, well, I want my fair share, whether that's reasonable or not.
Yeah. Well, that's where it becomes important in family constitutions and things like that to sort these things out as you go along.
Yeah.
Is what is the entitlement to the person working in the business as opposed to the person not working in the business. They're all family members normally identify with the business, but they mightn't have the skills to be in it, but they might have equity, they mightn't have equity, and therefore there's a plan of the incumbent to deal with those issues before it ever happens.
Mm.
That sort of ties into the whole fairness versus equality debate. And I think, as again, it comes back to those 3 circles. Like if you look through the family lens, you want to provide equal opportunity to all your kids. So you want to split it equally. But then, if you're looking at what's fair and sort of who's in the business and who's the right person to, take control of the business and things like that, there's a real conflict of interest there between the business and the family element. And, that's why it's so important to be proactive and plan for these things. But as we said, we've seen numerous examples where people don't, and then someone passes away and.
They just haven't got an understanding of how business runs, and they've been on the outside and suddenly they think, okay, well, where's the money?
It sounds like a really good time for me to chime in because I went through this myself. Hi, I'm Tom. I went through this sort of similar learning process myself a few years ago I'd always been associated and nearby at WEM and had sort of tangential jobs to it, but I hadn't been involved in any of the long-term planning and these sorts of things. And then all of a sudden one day there was we're all getting together and we're having a discussion about the family trust, which kind of leads into my first question that I'll ask you guys. I have a little bit more information now, but I'm generally a layman. And anyone listening now that might be in a similar position to me and asking these questions now, what is a family trust? Like if you just describe that the most simple way of, I've learned now that it's separate from the business, but talking to someone like me who's asking these questions for the first time of what's happening with mum and dad's money, as crass as that is, what's a family trust?
I think the most simple way to sort of look at it is one, if you put your tax hat on, it's a vehicle to really move money around within the family. But it's also a vehicle where you can start to build up your personal wealth away from the business. So, quite often what we'll see is you'll have the legacy business that grows and grows, and that sort of gets to a point, and you want to sort of de-risk things and actually take money out of the business. So what you'll do is you'll typically put that into a family trust, and then that's sort of the way to look after the family wealth and the family interests.
Yeah, and what you'd be referring to, Tom, is back then when everybody was getting to an age when they were starting to do things, talking with Graham and so forth, there was a need for money to go to the family.
Sure, of
so
course.
it was part of education. So a trust is whereby nobody has a direct interest. It's up to the trustee to decide who the income goes to.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was up to your father and your mother to think, well, okay, we want to treat everyone equally and give them X amount, and start to say, well, you're going to have this inheritance in the future, so everyone's got to be educated on how to deal with it and respect it and so forth.
Education is a fantastic word for it there, because the first conversations we had for it, I'll be honest, I walked out after that going, oh, so in like 10 years, if I want, I could open a zoo or something crazy. You have these big thoughts of what that could possibly mean. And then as we've gone through a bit further, not the reality of it, but a better understanding of exactly what this entails. And it is that idea of if anyone wants access to money, then we need to talk as a family, and we agree that that is a good use of the money to progress forward and things like that. I'll ask Graham, is this a new, fresh thing for the Ragg family? And when was this something that Wal had? Was there anything there? I asked because there was money put aside for grandchildren to fund schooling and things like that. But there's never been any discussion around that sort of.
Yeah. Dad's approach was simpler. It wasn't involved with this sort of thing. But certainly one of his things he had decided was that in his own way he wanted to fund all his grandkids through school and never mention it. And what he wanted at the end, or what he hoped for and what he got from each of the grandchildren, was a lovely book or a letter when they graduated saying, "Thank you, Pop." It was as simple as that. So we've got the same sort of thing, but it's got some more formality and rigour around it now so that those things are protected. But yeah, for Dad, my dad 25 years ago, no, it wasn't thought of.
And I guess reflecting on our path as a family, I think for a lot of family businesses, the wealth generation is the family business.
Mm-hmm.
And for longer term businesses that are conservatively fiscally operated, that wealth stays within the business. But once a business grows to a certain size, the risk is that if something goes wrong in that business, all that wealth is lost.
Yep.
And if it is a family business where there's family members operating or not operating within that business, I'm sure a lot of the driving factor for those involved in the business, owning the business, is to provide for their family. Having a family trust helps segregate, push some of that wealth outside of that business at a point that, from a tax perspective and from whether it's your banks or something will permit, and put wealth aside for the family to use, and they may afford other investment opportunities or to provide income to family members or whatever the owner of the trust decides will happen. That's about the point it reached for Wem, wasn't it? In the Ragg family?
That's right. It got that way for us to make sure that, and it also, I think one of the conversations I remember having with Steve was talking about, let's make sure that Wem itself stays lean enough and hungry enough, because we've got a very conservative balance sheet.
Mm-hmm.
We're not too adventurous that way, which suits for now.
Some could say we have a lazy balance sheet.
That could be it. But it's also very healthy. And it means that we've been able to, in simple terms, hive some off legally, properly, sensibly, and means that can then be exercised for the family's benefit or other investments in the future.
Sure.
Yeah, because as everyone grows, everyone's needs change. The four of you, you're all in different stages.
That leads me into my next question. I know we've talked about future-proofing and stuff on
What sort of zoo is it? Come on.
No. We'll get back to that. No, but grandchildren, are they included in that? Are they considered, you talked about the spheres and things like that. Where do they fall in there? I ask because more of them keep coming along. And eventually there will be a position where some of us have got 2 kids, some of us have got none. Does that impact family trust? How far forward are you guys playing this game?
Well, you really need to think about it from the immediate family point of view, because in your family you've got 4 children, so Graham and Di are dealing with the 4 of them. Whether they need to break it down to the next stages is questionable, because they can deal with you 4, and then you 4 can deal with that situation, and then over the top they can come in and trump you and deal with the grandchildren too. So, this until the grandchildren get to an age where their wants change.
I think it falls back to what Tom said about what there can be fair and then what's equitable as well. There's.
But normally in families, you'll deal with the immediate family. Just make it
right.
not too complex.
Yeah, I think so. Otherwise, then you're counting on who has a cat and who has 2 dogs and who has 3 leprechauns in the yard and this sort of thing.
How many cars one person owns? Anything.
Well,
it get a bit tricky.
It sounds like there's an attempt to not let it get unwieldy. And part of that is to always bring it back into that core focus of what you're trying to achieve, with that money being tucked away somewhere. We tend to have an annual catch-up where it's floated to us what some concepts of what money might be used for. If anyone is looking to do any big projects, then they can put their hand up there and sort of raise that. But I imagine that you guys are talking more often than you're sharing out to the entire family trust. Is it yourself and Stephen who work on that, or what's? I know Mum is probably involved.
Yeah, look, in terms of thinking about trust, you can't do anything without good advice. And the advice must come from Mann, Judd, in our case, or similar. And, for family businesses listening, don't try to do this yourself. You'll just end up in a quagmire. I think it's important with things, don't you think, Mike?
Correct.
No, that's really important. I think we get good advice from there. We get good advice also from our solicitors. But the onus rests with me to make the good decisions still, with Di on behalf of the family.
Yeah, and you move to more of a family office situation which looks after the wealth coming out of the business.
Mm-hmm.
So when business feeds the family office scenario. So that's a whole different setup story.
And the family office, in our case, is just getting strong enough now that we'll have some more regular catch-ups with, I think Tom might want to help us with a few more of those as well as with Steve.
You're going to come for the sausage sizzle.
I would love to.
We treat it like Bunnings. You got to get a snag.
We'll get a snag.
Yeah.
We'll have a few more of those, and because the business is maturing, the opportunity is maturing. We've got to keep looking at them.
To answer your question earlier, Tom, as families evolve, what you start to see is, it always starts with the controlling owner.
Mm-hmm.
Then it moves down to siblings, cousins. If you get to a fourth generation, by that stage you're pretty, fairly distant relatives. And I think, as that evolution occurs, we talk about this concept of pruning the family tree sometimes, and that's required. So what you'll see is, there might be, say, this situation, say you've got four brothers, you might buy two of the brothers out and two brothers might want to go forward. So, that there might need to be an event where you actually, financially buy them out to sort of protect the control and sort of, prune the family tree. So, because otherwise what will happen is as time goes on and, if we want to be an infinite business, the family tree 4 or 5, it's exponential. So, and you sort of lose control and it becomes a lot harder to manage. So, that's a concept we sort of talk about quite a bit.
Look, a bit of a curveball from we've been talking all today about that top-down leadership of Graham recognising the importance of succession and things like that. But say someone, my age, 40 odd and whatever, is listening and they're concerned about the succession plan that their parent has for the family business, that they may not have taken this seriously enough. Is it upon them? Should they, is it worth them contacting you and starting that process?
I'd say yes.
And then that, of course, you're going to say yes, but
we can always help.
No, I agree. It is.
If you're looking at that situation and you're concerned about the security of your parents and then the legacy, is it an awkward thing to come to that situation and then you drag them to the parents, or?
You've got to be careful how you handle these things, and the incumbent person who's sort of in charge, they've got to be brought into the journey somehow. Otherwise, you'll get nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
So it's delicate, but you're only trying to attempt to address these issues for the betterment of the business and the family. They both go together. So there's discussions to be held. There's various ways of going about it, how you deal with each of the individual family members and so forth. Sometimes there's a catalyst which can cause these things to happen. Hopefully it's just a small blip in the radar.
Yeah.
It gets people thinking about things and so forth. So there's always ways to have conversations with people, just to make sure they are thinking about it.
I think, just to add to that, I think it's about understanding perspectives as well. And I think having an independent facilitator there sometimes can help, whether that's us or, it could be the solicitor, it could be someone else in the professional network. But I think having that independent person there, it can be a pretty emotionally charged conversation. So I think, just having a cool, calm, sort of rational head in the room to help mediate and help people understand the different perspectives is really important.
Would you say that you guys, you have a different perspective to a lawyer? And I mean that in a very, I'm saying very positive things about you guys, but we've had meetings before, family-wise, where the lawyer has been there and it's been run as a meeting and everyone, there's an expectation and things like that. Whereas when we've had the family trust meetings, apart from the first one, which was ripping off the Band-Aid, ever since then, any of those sorts of meetings we've had have been a lot more laid back and it feels more friendly than official.
Probably what he's trying to say is that for families who might be hearing this and thinking about things, you will get some good, robust, real discussion with some good accounting and business advisory people, where you'll get a perspective that's a bit more legal a view and a stronger view maybe if you talk to lawyers. As close as they are, as good as your lawyers are, they'll still have that perspective. It's a different thing. They'll be talking to you a little bit more about risk to business and risk to yourself and personal risk, which you've got to be aware of. But I think that, for our family, we've moved past all those things. That concern's gone. And I think that we're trying to make sure we foster good knowledge amongst all the family as to what the opportunities are and how it's available. So the advice that you can get and the partnership you can get from work with Mann, Judd is invaluable on this sort of stuff.
I think there is no better spot to end that than that, Graham. That was sound advice. And of course, if anybody wants more information about family trusts, they can just get in contact with you guys. Am I correct?
Correct, Leah.
Directly, or can we go through the website? Like, where do we go?
We're available 24/7.
And if you can't get them, I'm happy to act as their agent.
All right, fantastic. Fantastic. HLB, Mann, Judd. Thank you, everybody. This has been, I'm sure, an eye-opening or ear-opening discussion for a lot of people listening for the first time. And if you've missed any of the earlier episodes, make sure you check back because there's 5 others of them. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Leah.
Thanks, Leah.
For further information, please visit our website, hlb.com.au.